Scientism is the very widespread and erroneous belief that science is all the real knowledge there is. In other words, that anything that cannot be understood through science really doesn't count as knowledge. And my talk was entitled Monopolising Knowledge, because in a certain sense that's what scientism tries to do.
And do you feel that scientism is growing as a phenomenon?
Well, it has grown slowly over the last 200 years, and now it's very spread, dispersed. In the academy, it's very often, in a certain sense, the air we breathe. So it's rarely expressed very explicitly. People don't very often get up and say, I think that science is all the real knowledge there is. People don't do that. But what they often do is they take it as an unspoken assumption. And so it infiltrates itself into the thinking of ourselves and certainly of many people who want to attack religion, take that scientism as a kind of unspoken assumption or presumption in much of their arguments. So, for example, if you think about the militant atheist arguments of the day, one can perhaps see those as founded on three pillars. One pillar is that the argument that science has somehow disproved religion. The other is an argument that science has somehow explained religion away by pointing to psychological or evolutionary causes or triggers for religion. And the third argument that's often put forward is that religion is evil. That's the third pillar. That's not specifically founded on scientism. But those first two pillars, that science has disproved religion and that science has explained religion away, are very much founded on the belief that science isn't all the real knowledge there is. And so my book really examines this idea of scientism, how it grew up over history, and some of the reasons why it's easy for us to slip into this way of thinking.
Couldn't you say that science does have a claim to being more rational than other kinds of knowledge?
I think science has a claim to being supremely valuable knowledge about the topics that it's competent to address. So science proceeds by a number of assumptions, background assumptions about the way the world works. And these are part of the way that it actually develops its knowledge, it actually obtains its knowledge. And the most important characteristics, I believe, are that science investigates the world insofar as it is reproducible or repeatable. This underlies the whole experimental approach that science has, the ability to repeat an experiment. If someone has done an experiment in one place at one time and obtained a certain phenomenon, if someone else comes along and does the same experiment somewhere else at some other time, the expectation of science is those people are going to get the same answer. That is a very fundamental method of science. The whole empirical method is based on that. But I would assert that not everything is reproducible. There are many things in the world that are not reproducible. There are many forms of knowledge that are not about reproducible events. Perhaps the most obvious one to think about is history. I mean, the history of this world of human actors is not about reproducible events. It's very often the most unique and unusual events that attract the most interest. Reproducibility is one characteristic of science, which acts as a built-in limitation to its competence to answer the questions that we might be interested in answering. Another characteristic of science is to do with what I call clarity. This is the ability to express the results of an experiment or an observation of the world in terms that can be understood both by the original experimenter or observer and by other observers. And this clarity is very often obtained, for example, by measurement. So measurement is very important in science, and it's very often expressed in terms of mathematics, but not always. There are other ways of expressing this clarity. But not everything in our world possesses that kind of clarity. And so I would argue that, for example, musicians or people who study music can establish, let's say, and well understand and know, in a certain sense, the genius, let's say, of Johann Sebastian Bach, and yet that genius can't be understood or expressed in some kind of crisp mathematical way that possesses the kind of clarity that science calls for. So science can't encompass many of the things that are important in our lives.
Does that mean we can be less clear about things like religion?
It's true, but I think to pick on religion as being the thing that's less clear is one of the things I want to avoid doing, because I think there are many, many disciplines that are inherently not scientific, that lack either reproducibility or lack the kind of measuramental clarity that science calls for. And so it's often portrayed that, well, you know, science is about facts and religion is about morality or purpose or the big questions of life. I think that's not really quite capturing what I see as being the difference. Science actually is distinctive not just from religion, but it's also distinctive from history. It's also distinctive from arts or political analysis or sociology or jurisprudence. None of these things are sciences, and yet they have their own real knowledge. And it's a grave mistake. It's just simply an error to believe that science has all the knowledge that really is, and these other things don't have knowledge.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.